Brother.
Yeah. Good.
Kill it.
Thanks, Bradley. Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? I love these lights. I'm just tall enough for them to hit me directly in my pupils. I can't see a fucking thing. Just I'm thrilled to be here. Again, thanks everyone from Cult for choosing us. And I'm really happy to tell you the story of NÜTRL. Interesting time. Originally, this presentation was going to be, I think the marquee thing said, Paul Meehan, owner, NÜTRL Vodka. Does anyone know who the owner of NÜTRL Vodka is now? Any idea? I'm going to tell you it's not me, and I'll tell you the story as we go on here. Oh, sorry, yes? It is Anheuser-Busch. So, guys, you're going to get a really different story than I was intending to tell. But you're going to actually get the genesis of the whole story. And I wanted to start off with that because it's actually happened about 2 weeks ago. So, very exciting time for me. I've slept about 3 hours in the past 3 weeks. I'm pretty sure I've had about 27 bottles of champagne. And I've already started getting oil paintings made of me, my wife, my family, and our dog. Because I know our great-grandkids are going to live in their own little castles like this place, and they're going to point to those guys and say, I don't know who they were, I fucking love those guys, God bless them. If there's one thing you're going to learn today, I hope, if you one thing you could take from this more, is that the secret of our success here is simplicity. And it is all about keeping it simple. So I'm going to keep this presentation incredibly simple. I'm actually, funny enough, in my business, I have an agency as well called Meehan Ideas. We're known for kind of elaborate trickery and lots of bells and whistles and presentations. This one is quite austere, is it not, Simi? Yes, it is. Because we have 20 minutes, and I'm famous for like 15-minute intros, so I'm halfway through there right now. But anyways, I was here last year as a supplier and a sponsor. We sponsored, we came to do some events and whatnot too, but the one thing I'll tell you is I remember, I won't name any names, Molson, if you're in the room, I apologize. There was some free beer going on in the room, and there was some free wine. And we were not free. We were entrepreneurial. The company was owned by my wife and I, and that's it. And so we said, we'll come, we'll bring our product. And James Drummond did some sampling. And at the nighttime events, we looked around the room, and 65% of the crowd was drinking our product. So Bradley and the guys were like, and it wasn't free. You had to pay for it. So they said, well, that's a good thing, I suppose. Something's going well. And that's kind of started our conversation with these guys here. And I'm happy to say that there will be free NÜTRLs tonight. So, woo! Yeah. Okay, I'd like a little poll here. Who here has had NÜTRL Vodka Soda? God bless you all. Thank you very much. I'm humbled. Yeah. Thank you so much. Who here's had a competitive brand? Okay, fuck you all. What the fuck? Seriously. We're getting to know each other. We're friends. You do that. You should have lied. You kept it simple. Now I don't like you. I've identified a couple of you, even the bright lights, and I know who you are. And no free drinks for you tonight. I've marked you. You see a little tag on you. No, jokes aside, appreciate all the support. It has been a bit of a phenomenal story, but it has been a very simple story. Overall, we've grown pretty rapidly. And in the province we're in right now, we're over 75% of the vodka soda category. It's pretty cool, eh, for a brand to go from zero to hero in that time. And we did it all, literally, through the power of those three things I mentioned before. The people, the product, and the purpose. I want to talk about the people off the bat. A couple of them are here today. I'm Paul Meehan. My name sounds like me in the room. Me ampersand is the name of the agency, me and, get it? My bride, Melissa, who's over there. Melissa, say hi. She's the wonderful woman in the front row. My friend Simi Uppel, my friend James Drummond, and who else is here? RJ and Chima and Adam McDonald, our team. That's our core team. The reason why I want to start the presentation off with them is although I'm speaking, I'm the guy who gets to kind of sweat under the lights, and I'm the guy who gets credited with the title of founder. There literally are 6 founders to this business. So I want to make sure that people understand in my 20 minutes here, if there's anything if I'm making the whole presentation about simplicity, you have to start with the number one ingredient. It sounds trite, to say that it's all about people. Literally, it couldn't have done without these people. And collectively, we've taken on the world and so far won at least a couple battles. So I'm certainly proud of the individuals. And if I had a 2-hour presentation, I'd take you through what they've all done. But let's just say that we're a 6-headed monster. Is that a fair way to put it? Yeah. So as we move on to the brand itself, you've all tried it. Most of you love it, except for the traders in the room who've tried other things. Why would you do that, by the way? That makes like no sense. You know how it's established. There's some interesting stories to this whole thing. Now, the reality is the product itself is simple, but it's also very done well. So I'm going to tell you something about the whole genesis of the story. So Melissa and I have 3 children, and they're all lovely. This is probably where I should have put up a picture of our kids, but I can show you on my phone later on. They're adorable. 3 kids and a dog. After our third was born, Lennox, we were in Whistler, and Melissa said, we had a distillery, which I can bore you with that story as well, but the distillery had already been established for a couple of years. We said, you know what, we definitely need to stop, drinking wine and beer. We need to kind of lose a couple pounds. We need to kind of get a little bit healthier, feel a little bit better. And the terrific shame of the whole story is I'm telling it. Oh, it's happening right now. We had our vodka, and by the way, she started this whole thing too. And we were drinking it with what? What do you think we were mixing our vodka with? Oh, I wish it was that nice. I wish we could say Perrier, not Coke. We were trying to bring the sugar down. We were trying to bring the bloat down. We wanted to enjoy ourselves. We didn't want to feel too heavy. What were we drinking it with? We wanted Fresca. Okay? Now, we're like, hey, this is pretty good. But then we're also like, oh, hang on a second, that's kind of aspartame-y, and aspartame's not good for you. And remember, we're busy parents and business people, and we're tired, and we just want to kind of feel good. So the need state for us is we wanted to drink because we have 3 children, and we have a business, but we didn't want to feel heavy and bloated and whatnot. So the idea was to kind of create something that was as close to a vodka soda as possible. Now, who here is American, by the way? Anyway, God bless you, neighbors. Land of the free pour, a vodka soda is, 2 of them, there's a fight in every glass, right? Like there's too much alcohol, you don't need that. In Canada, it's not enough. But on average, a vodka soda would be about, anywhere from 12 to 24% alcohol, which is, let's just call that over the top. Nobody needs that. Certainly don't need more than 1 or 2. And we said, let's make something that kind of replicates all the kind of convenience of a beer, that ease, the facility, the 5%, and all the easy drinking. So we actually started mixing it with Perrier lemon. And the Perrier lemon, which we found out after the fact, was a process called vapor distillation, which uses all the fruit and nothing else. So that's the simple story of NÜTRL Vodka Soda. We literally wanted something that tasted a little bit better, and it was more about what we didn't put in versus what we did. And there were many other iterations before we came to that. But ultimately, what we landed on here is the product you see today, which has no carbs, no sugar, no preservatives, it's actually technically 98 calories. The government makes us round up to 100, because that's an important thing to regulate, of course. Seriously, we got letters and phone calls. I'm like, are you serious? It has to be 100. Why? You have to round up. Why do I have to round up? Why do I have to have this phone call? Don't get me started. It's ridiculous. But the product, simple product from simple need. Now, I was here last year, and James and I were on the way back from this thing. We said, how would you talk about, if there's a room full of people who want to learn about branding? That's why this whole notion of simplicity came out. The need was simple. The product answer was simple. The quality was simple. But there's a big word that wasn't kind of thrown into the mix of this presentation. It's also incredibly consistent, right? Because people, when they're looking for adoption of brands, obviously you can get one chance for them to try it, but you can't let them down ever, right? You can't have that anything. So some of the things that kind of get in the way of consistency on product side, especially in beverage alcohol, sugars, yeasts, cans, vessels, whatever it is. So obviously canning this in a beer can was probably the best way to get consistency, because cans are tiny little kegs. We call it our micro keg when people ask it for a draft. You having a draft? Yeah, it's a tiny little keg. Crack it open. But also, there's nothing for it to go bad. So there's no sugar. There are no preservatives. There are no chemicals, no stabilizers, no mouthfeel enhancers. Now, by the way, raise your hands, shameful people who said you've had competitive brands, by the way. Just go ahead and do it. Anyone else? Picking one? Okay, those competitive brands, young lady, who I'm speaking to right now, did they taste any different? Did they taste the same to ours? It tastes similar. Okay, anyone want to tell the truth now? Anyone? No? Anyone else? Yeah.
I just like it at all compared to it.
Yeah. Yes, best friend. Tell me why.
It just left this weird filmy feeling on my tongue.
That's right.
Nowhere near as good, and I regretted it as soon as I opened it up.
It tastes like regret. That's fantastic. I still love you, by the way. We're gonna have a drink later. Talking about it. But you know what? That's actually the new tagline. Tastes like regret. Tastes like regret. And shame. But ultimately, they're not just them. God bless them. If you're in the room, thanks for trying, people. Try again. What a lot of these people do, and a lot of the flavor companies I've worked with over the years, they try to do is, frankly, overcomplicate, like remove the simple. And they put things called mouthfeel enhancers. Mouthfeel enhancers are essentially MSG for drinks. And there's nothing in both Canada and the US that says you have to actually claim what's in it. You've heard the term natural and artificial flavor? Okay, so natural and artificial, you can sneak those in. We could actually sneak them in as well. We chose not to. A lot of these things, what they do is they make you feel like there's a sweetness, right? So on some of the competitive brands, I won't name any names, Nude, you will get that kind of artificial flavor because the chemical compounds within the actual natural flavor have those elements. So we chose not to do that. By the way, Simi's going to run through a lot of our products as we run through here. If there's someone you haven't seen before, happy to talk to you about them post-presentation. See, I'm already halfway through my time and I'm ranting. But all of those things had the same premise. Actually, the king of them all is the one on the screen right now, which is NÜTRL 4, which is actually the real test of simplicity, because it's actually NÜTRL vodka and bubbly water, and that is fucking it. So anyone's had this one yet? If you're from Ontario, this is coming to LCBO stores. If you're living in BC, it's coming to BC liquor stores. And if you live in Alberta, ask James, he'll tell you where to find it. But it's something, it actually is probably the pinnacle. It's the best example of what simplicity is about. So we want to make sure that was something that was very, very important. If you look through our whole, our whole strategic perspective on that, NÜTRL is one of the brands within the portfolio, but is the best expression of simplicity. So hopefully that's come across in terms of making sure that you don't try to fool things on the palate, fool things on the aesthetic. The look and feel, of course, you see for the NÜTRL brand is kind of stand out because it's not just, it proves itself in black, white, silver, and blue, right? It's a simple aesthetic. A lot of people say, oh, it's the white can category. I think we've successfully proven that it's not just the white can category. It's NÜTRL vodka soda, so they all kind of stand across. And I think some of these things are probably new to you, the N7, and the N4, and the N3. But as we move through the world, one of the reasons we were acquired is there's a strong belief that this brand can be that dominant, designated vodka soda brand. So with the percentages we are in this country, it's a pretty good indicator that as we move through the world, this strategy to keep it simple is going to work. So when you go actually look at the whole portfolio of the family, next slide there, Sam, you can see that the way we've kind of mapped everything out, positioned everything, based on those amazing nights in Whistler, where Melissa and I wanted to get loaded because we had 3 kids, and we wanted to not feel shitty the next day. That's the simple part of that story. That story shouldn't be told without mentioning that the parent brand, the NÜTRL Vodka that you see on the far left, was the spirit that kind of started it all. That's a remarkably clean spirit as well. We have a distillery in Delta. Did anyone here know that we actually distill vodka as well? Do you know that? Okay, good. Because we talk about that quite a lot. We don't kind of beat it up in overtly kind of creative. We actually do it in very intrinsics oriented. We are distillers, made by distillers, made by distillers. We say that quite a lot. But we want people to know that in terms of establishing differentiation for us versus everybody else, that we are the ones who know how to make vodka, which we believe is a big demarcator in vodka soda. Because it's actually half of the word. Vodka soda is half vodka, so you have to at least make sure you make vodka pretty well. I think that's pretty much common sense. So, moving on from the product. This is actually one that I find really interesting because I just told you the genesis of the actual physical product itself. But you're all marketers, you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Or how do I want to affect change? Or how do I want to grow? There's any number of questions or things you might want to do with a brand. But a healthy brand is a brand of purpose, right? It meets needs. It's different. It's a story. It's got something to it. And what I'd like to talk about for the next 5 minutes here, 6 minutes, is about the purpose that people feel for the brand. This is something I created an idea called premium populism. Now, that's just a term I made up because what I wanted to do is make sure the NÜTRL, because it was so simple, because it was so consistent, because it met those unmet needs, because it looks so clean, could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Most marketing profs will tell you, you need to zone in on who you are, what you're about, who you're talking to, what they want. Now, if you look at our Instagram, you look at any of our social media, anyone follow us on Instagram, by the way? I love some of you. Please follow us on Instagram. It's very entertaining, and it makes me feel good when people follow us. But this premium populism really works because people have adopted it and make the brand feel like their own. Like they really feel like it's their own. That's why we're allowed to kind of go across platforms like the NHL. Obviously in Canada, it's Canada, so NHL is the most popular thing we do. And in other markets, other times of year, we do Toronto International Film Festival. But the big thing we do, properties notwithstanding, is that we actually kind of talk a lot, involve people a lot, promote a lot, kind of get really into kind of simple things, and we talk, we're just constantly doing something. And this notion of premium populism is born of this need for simple kind of connection points. And everyone's familiar with how Velcro works? Hooks and eyes, right? So we're not trying to do like a laser pointer or like, we're not trying to like use a hammer. We're literally trying to be like, there's need states like, hey, it's my day, things are going fine. Oh, hey, it's cool. Drag across and catch you at certain points where you kind of like us. So it's actually not that deep a relationship, just like mine with James, right? Just totally surface oriented. Just kidding, he's a great guy. But we want to make sure that when people see that, when they see our brand on hockey, if you look at that creative right there, simple intrinsic, simple beauty, simple story, or as a tasting booth at the Toronto International Film Festival, that you see it, you kind of get the premise, you understand what the brand's about, but also you kind of feel like a slight connection versus an intense connection. I think a lot of brands out there try to like be everything for you at all times, and that's just a load of shit, right? Like for us, there's the lessons we learned on the beer side, on like sociability and accessibility and occasion, which we kind of said, okay, yeah, well, yeah, by the way, like Corona. Think about Corona, for example. Great brand, which is now one of my colleagues, which is fantastic. They've really nailed that kind of ritual, right? When you crack a bottle, put a lime, instant psychological boost, right? For us, it's more like that unwind, relax, or pump up, or engage, or get started, because the brand doesn't actually do anything that's too deep on the product side, and it kind of is super accessible. What we do to push that on the social side is we literally ask people to tell us. And no one in this room is stranger to that notion of asking people on social. Everyone's super familiar with it. Have relatively advanced social media marketing plans compared to what anyone would have done 10 years ago or 12 years ago. It's not just about kind of being purely responsive or able to respond. It's about understanding what they need. And for us, what we've said with this simple product is we're simple response. We're simple answer. We don't really promise to kind of change your world, because the aesthetic works, the liquid works, the whole kind of experience kind of delivers things that are honest. And this is something which goes back to purpose. Like, the brand tells it like it is. We talk about our intrinsics quite a lot, and we actually espouse a lot of virtues in our comms that are probably pretty much first person versus most other brands. So we'll answer things directly, we'll answer things on DMs, we'll talk to people, not just because we want them to feel good, but because we literally want to respond to them. So that's one of those things that is pretty good. Now, that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. And I can tell you, if there's one thing these guys asked me to talk about within this experience, is like, what have you done through all your strategic planning and all your executions? That's been great, which I've just told you a million things that are great, because I'm fairly effusive and I'm pretty happy and proud. But we made a bunch of mistakes too, right? This notion of premium populism allows you to kind of be human and real, but also allows you to be human and real, which allows you to make a lot of mistakes. So we have, I'll tell you one quick story. We did a social media post at one point, and it was a number of people having a good time on a pond in Calgary, and somewhere in Alberta, moreover. And one of the people on the page was 17 years old. And in terms of keeping it simple, that's not simple. It's also simple to keep an eye out for that type of stuff, right? So beyond the fact that that was obviously immediately pulled and obviously not what we want to do, it forced us then to say, okay, what simple things do we need to do to make sure that our premium populist approach, our everyone's in approach, doesn't allow that to happen again, right? So we instituted a 25 plus mandatory age. We had to card people if you wanted to be shared on our social, which was kind of funny, but actually it was a simple response to a simple mistake. Although every competitor we had jumped on us and just tried to pound us, you wouldn't believe it, man. Like, we woke up one morning, there's like 700 people from, obviously from competitive brand, calling us all sorts of things. And I responded to most people, said like, no, literally, I tried to make sure that people understood that honest mistakes happen and have simple responses to it. Getting back to the notion of purpose, though, I should hope that when people come, see anyone at this conference, they want to learn something about a brand, they understand a perspective I have, that a brand is something, like the notion of the brand is something that's literally hot and burned into you, right? Like, that's what a brand is. It's something you really care about. NÜTRL, not so much that. It's just something that, maybe like a light tattoo, or maybe like a little roll-on tattoo, something that adds a little depth to your experience, or it's something you look at and you like, something you love, maybe not necessarily scorched into you, but something that's certainly something that's part of you. Maybe like a stamp in your passport, maybe something like a set of something you really love around your house, a trinket that you put from a trip. So, and that's a really odd thing for a brand marketer to do, because most people say that purpose is about making sure you're ingrained and like part of it. But NÜTRL's done a really good job, and I think it'll continue. I believe it's going to continue a good job being prevalent, always moving, doing neat things, being engaging, and also being pretty much the best brand certainly within the category that doesn't trample over people's personality or experiences, but goes with it. And that's a really challenging thing to do. And again, all of us in the room, most of us probably have been told that you need to define those spaces. So we've actually been a bit of an experiment saying, like, how do we actually go with it? And I think that the reason we've worked well so far is we've taken a very, very simple approach. The people we've worked with historically have done a great job, and the people we are now going to work with in our new world are going to take that to the next level. So that's me for now. I'm happy to answer any questions you have around the story. I believe Brad's going to come up and ask me some questions, but feel free to ask anything, because I'm an open book. But thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Is that good?
That was lovely.
All right. Which seat do you want? Do you want that one, right?
Yeah, you can grab a seat.
What if I
there.
wanted that one?
You can have it.
No, I don't want that. I'm just
Okay. I just didn't want to deny you in front of all these people.
Oh, it's okay. Oh.
I think we're accepting questions at the URL TGS, hashtag TGS_neutral. While we're waiting for some stuff to come in, I'm just looking at it here. So,
Yes, Brad.
how well did you do on that deal?
Well, I told you the oil paintings are being made.
I know.
I actually can't hear you. My chopper's in the background. Can I tell you, though, we were not planning on doing this.
Yeah.
And as Melissa and I, and by the way, we've gotten into some awesome fights about this recently. Because I said, I wouldn't have done this.
Who won, though?
Oh, are you serious? Yeah. No, no, I'm not.
I know
not
she's watching you.
Pandering, I'm not pandering here. No, she did. I would say that when I say we would not have done this, sorry, no, I say I would not have done this. It just wasn't in the plan. Like, we literally had those folded piece of paper meetings across the table, like, and a lot of people in venture capital and private equity approached us, but legit, man, like the people, Kyle Norrington, the president of Labatt Canada, and all the guys from International, they basically said, how can we help you? Which was a pretty amazing thing for me to hear. 'Cause I'm like, well, not like, it wasn't about greed or anything other than wanting to do it right. So I said, well, I'd love to take this around the world. And the funny thing about being entrepreneurial, because it's really cool to see things grow, and then there's these moments where you're like, oh, I have how much in inventory? Oh, I can't do what? And I think it comes down to something like this, it really enables it. It's a freeing up effect. So,
Yeah.
so what was it? It was a deal that gave us freedom and opportunity to grow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Quick question. So, is the pronunciation of the brand name an issue? I've always heard NÜTRL.
Well, it's a stylized version of the word neutral.
Yep.
So it's pronounced like neutral, not neuter. My favorite is Nutri. Oh, I love that Nutri vodka. Fantastic. I get a lot of that.
From back east.
No, just from people in BC.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why
Are
they
they
talk
from
about-
back east?
Yeah. Technically, this is east, right?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like this. This is good. I feel close to
What's
it
fun?
right
What's fun? I'm waiting for a question to come in.
Yeah,
But
go for it.
what's really funny is that I don't know how many times we had lunch while this was happening, and Stoneface just told me nothing about it.
I'm good like that.
Yeah.
Kept it simple.
I'm questioning some things.
Focused
about
on
our
lunch, Brad.
relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love vodka. I don't like soda. Please, can you help me?
Oh, I've already got it fixed. We have a vodka. You can
Yeah.
stay away from the soda. Yeah.
Or put whatever you want in
I
it.
think they're called shots. Go for it. Yeah.
Stick around. I think there's going to be
Oh
some
yeah, there'll be
shots
some
later.
vodka. Absolutely. Yeah.
One more. Tell us, you partnered with the NHL. Was that a long pursuit? Because you're Canadian, right?
I am Canadian.
Yeah,
I'm
so,
from
I mean, the
Toronto.
NHL makes sense.
I live in Vancouver. Honestly, people ask me, was that a vanity thing to do? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Of course. No. Again, establishing the personality and the profile, we wanted to have it. It's really big beards do a great job of appealing to a number of people for a number of reasons, right? So, and I would have said this before they were my new bosses, but Budweiser, for example, does a great job of actually even keeping the kind of respect of craft beer guys, which my background is craft beer too, right? So they do it through being prevalent, and you could arguably say dominant. They're everywhere. So on the media side, that's why hockey is such a big property, because it's part of our culture. It's a big part of the year, and it's also highly aspirational. There's all sorts of things. Plus, the eyeballs. It's live action, and it's appointment watching. So you get a lot of. I don't know if anyone's seen our Neutral Zone in-game content. Yes, we can also do a lot of in-game content, which works really well for us.
And we talked about this too, the nut that cracks, right, in regards to the male demographic.
Yeah.
It's super powerful.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's served up in a can, and now you've got it in sort of the heart of Canadian sport.
Yeah, I didn't want to go too in depth in terms of all that, but the male audience and the crowd we've had, we're actually 55% male consumers. Most people wouldn't have assumed that. But that's what I meant when I said trying to appeal a lot of occasions, be like that. Oh, because most people, when I say that, they go, "Oh, I had no idea." Yeah. And if I told you the size of the business we are, you'd be like, "Oh, I had no idea." I told somebody the other day our volume, and they said, "Oh, geez, I had no idea." And that's really kind of part of the secret sauce, because all of a sudden, I think if you're trying to be a cult brand, or early adopters will reject you really fast.
Yeah.
If you're like magnesium, magnesium brands are the ones who go like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh, where'd they go?" Right? And we wanted to be that slow burning fire. And our volumes actually went over our expectations, and we wanted to make sure so funny enough, when the NHL thing came in, we were like, okay, all right, let's meter this, make sure the content is real. And that's why we don't change the creative too often. That's why you kind of see us, and we're kind of rolling in the background there.
We got a couple of minutes here. Good questions coming in. What are some of your other what are some of your other favorite simple brands?
Oh, I think the king of simple brands is Red Bull. I'd say Flu Vodka because Stephen Bailey's right there.
Yeah,
But,
our man.
but that's actually another great example too. Stay weird. Like that's you can be simple and weird like Flu Vodka, which I think is dynamite. Red Bull obviously is simple in terms of purpose. I don't drink Red Bull. It sounds like I do from the way I talk, but I don't. I think, and again, simple. No, those two are probably the best examples.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah. Oh, sorry, Apple. Let's be honest. Apple, like that's for me. Although it's complicated to Mac users, whoever you are in the room, it's intuitive. Intuitive is about simplicity as well.
It sure is, yeah. How do you feel about White Claw entering the Canadian market?
Sorry.
How do you feel?
I've never heard of.
Okay. Next question.
Sorry, is this some sort of diet beverage? Okay, I'll be honest with you. I used to work for that company many years ago. And it's funny, people are like, ooh, they're coming. I just told you guys, our approach is kind of be simple and prevalent, moving across. I don't think people put things down to pick them up. I think when they adopt them, they become part of their repertoire. I think it's old school marketing to say people make hard switches. That's why, again, part of our thing is to be in there. I wish them well. I don't want them to steal there's certain brands that kind of look a little too similar to ours, which I don't really dig. But I will say, with those guys, they're a fully different product. They have carbs, they have sugar, they're not made with vodka. So what we will do is remind consumers of our intrinsics, and we'll do very much what we've done, just a little, we won't dedicate any, I probably shouldn't give them airtime right now. Thanks whoever asked that question. Probably Melissa, but I think that as long as we are who we are and we keep moving forward and we keep it simple, we will be as big as we're supposed to be.
Yeah. I know the answer to this one, but I think there's some insight here that you could probably offer up. And so, did you know anything about the spirits industry before starting NÜTRL? And if not, how do you attack the learning curve? But you had a long history.
Yeah, well, I'm a 30-year industry guy in beverage alcohol. And I actually, spirits world, funny, I helped launch Smirnoff Ice and Mike's Hard Lemonade and stuff like that. So I wrought many sugary beverages upon the earth, so I apologize for that. And Loranda, thank you for helping us do that over many years ago. I'd say that the learning curve in terms of spirits, it's interesting. That's a great question because craft spirits aren't really a thing in Canada. In the United States, like Tito's is the biggest spirit in the country, Tito's vodka. So the learning curve is I'm still in the middle of it because trying to get craft spirits up to a certain size because consumers don't spend enough. They either spend very little, like we're talking floor-based money for like brands like Absolute, Smirnoff, all this, they're basement price, and then the other ones are like $50, $60. So you get 25 to 60, and we're right in between. So it's good thing that the vodka soda came in to kind of fill our pipeline and get going. But I'm still in the middle of the learning curve of how to grow premium spirits. But the NÜTRL bottle right now, which is shaped like an N, I don't know why I thought to do that, but it doesn't make tons of sense. But we're trying to figure out the ways to kind of get things to the point where they're going to adopt it at a higher rate.
So now with the acquisition, while I'm waiting for some more questions to come in, what's going to change?
Nothing. No, the way I'm still the head of the company, and I got fired from my agency, which is interesting, by my wife. And I'm not allowed to.
How'd that go?
It was awesome. It was fantastic. Yeah, Melissa's now the creative director of that company, and they're very much interested in taking the brand around the world.
Yeah.
So I will be taking the brand around the world. And in terms of the actual operating part of it, it's still business as usual. And as I mentioned to you before, the cool thing about what they've said is they've bought companies before and they've made mistakes. And now in terms of, makes no sense to buy something and then put it into your system. Buy it for what you like about it. And what they liked about us is, again, the simplicity and the speed and the ability to kind of understand opportunities and consumers. And like literally, the growth of NÜTRL Vodka Soda has been, it's just, market hasn't seen anything like it. So they're like, well, let's see if we can apply, let's let that do what it's going to do, fund it, fuel it, and then see how we can apply the thinking across other areas. So if anything happens, some of our ways will get adopted in their system.
It's funny with brands that achieve success, they almost seem like overnight.
Yeah.
What was the run-up for you guys?
Well, the distillery is 6 years old. And I'll be super honest.
So it was overnight.
Well, pre-overnight. But the advent of the vodka, well, the vodka soda was actually funny. Cause part of the story is the product genesis. Miss and I wanted to do that. Another part of the story, which would take another 15 minutes, I'll just go quickly on it, was the liquor regulations in Canada, basically, specifically BC, and also every other market too, once you get up to a certain size, you lose your small status, and you're either like tiny little craft distillery or you're Bacardi or Diageo, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
With beer and wine, there's all these stage gates where you come through and you can share the markup. So I was at the Premier's office 4 times. I've seen multiple Premiers and whatnot trying to lobby, and they wouldn't do anything. They're literally, I don't know, on Twitter or playing something while I was talking. They couldn't care less. Yeah. So it forced me into a corner to basically say, oh, we need to get some rev. So to answer the question, that was 6 years ago, but the vodka soda is about 3 years. So I'd say that the bulk of the delta from where we were to where we are is about 3 years. It's pretty fast.
Yeah, that's very quick.
Yeah.
So during the startup phase, probably years 1 to 3, was there a defining go, no-go moment? Where there was a very scary decision that you needed to make? And if there was, what was that like?
Well, a lot of scary moments.
Scary?
Well, I don't get scared too easily, except for when Melissa gets mad at me. But she was actually really supportive in terms of always wanting me to do something entrepreneurial. And so the agency is 14 years old. Distillery is about 6. When it came down to the go, no-go on some of these things, the scale of them kind of got a little hairy. There's times when you're sitting on 14, 20, 16 million bucks worth of inventory.
Yeah.
And you know you're going to sell it, you're the fastest one in the category, but you're like, who knows?
What if we don't?
Yeah, so those are scary. But in terms of actually starting those things, I remember this discussion we had to buy the distillery from someone. We bought the actual assets. The distillery is about a year old, a beautiful facility, from someone who didn't have a marketing plan or a sales plan, who's had built this beautiful facility. I think the discussion took about 2 minutes because Melissa was like, "Let's do this. This is the right thing to do." But there were 2 or 3 years of what the fuck did we do? For sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You touched on this in a little bit, but consumers are quite partial or love local in parentheses. How do you grow your product while still maintaining that next door feel?
It's a good question too. I think our original can said "Made in BC" on them. Everything "Made in BC," "Made in BC." I was in Alberta, which we're in right now, at a store, and this guy was like, "You got to take that off your cans because we don't like BC." I didn't even think that. Now I came from Toronto, moved to Vancouver. I remember saying, "Hey, I'm from Toronto." I fucking hate Toronto. Oh, okay. I went to school in Halifax. I hate Toronto. So I understood that you could actually be. You don't necessarily need to be local, but we can be Canadian. So our cans also made in Canada now, which will then be replaced with NHL. So you want to kind of get your perspective in terms of trying to keep be crafty, be kind of proud of where you're from, but don't be too specific, I guess, because there's only so much value because you can't say, like you say made in BC, it actually is appealing in Ontario, but it's not in Alberta. So if you made in Canada, where we're all Canadian, we're launching in Quebec, not so happy about that. So it's a bit of a dance. I mean, ultimately, as your brand cracks up through those things, you can use those crutches less and less, and you can stand up for yourself. And that's why again, the aesthetic and the tonality and the actual physical product, the simplicity allows it to kind of be something people adopt and adapt, and they're more, again, they own it a bit more, so it becomes less about that physical thing, it's more about their relationship with it.
There must have been a moment where you and Melissa knew you'd nailed it. When was that?
Actually, that's a great question. I'd probably say, funny enough, when the LCBO listed us. Is that a fair way to put it?
I constantly feel like we're not
Well, 'cause she's never happy. Sorry, but that's actually really funny. But on the business side, Melissa says she's never happy, which is a whole other dynamic. But I would say when the LCBO listed us, because the Liquor Control Board of Ontario is remarkably challenging in terms of they're the biggest purchaser of spirits in the world, and traditionally they don't let products from BC kind of roll in. So we did a lot of work and we got in there and we're like, okay, game on. And now we're 3 of the top 5 SKUs in refreshing beverage at LCBO, which is pretty large.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Cannabis became a really popular subject a couple of years ago. And cannabis in beverages and cannabis in alcoholic beverages is actually an R&D thing. There's a lot of brands that are exploring it and maybe releasing products like that. Have you guys talked about that at all? Do you have any interest in it?
Every company under the sun asked our agency to develop some things. I just don't, beyond the fact that we're launching in the United States and I want to be able to travel, so we looked at it from that just regulatory hurdle, but I actually don't think that people can put one thing down to pick something else up. I think they might adopt it, like I said before. If cannabis beverages do a good enough job of being, if the propositions are simple and appealing enough and the price is right, then they might drag them across. But I think what you're seeing right now in cannabis is a lot of leafy things, a lot of herbal things, and I think that people will try them. I think personally, I think that cannabis, what I would invest in would be something more like the microdose liquids that are additives versus lifestyle brands, because none of these things can be lifestyle brands, you know? And they're already like marketed like cigarette brands with like warnings, and also I don't think there's enough kind of understanding of like usage and function and stuff, so I'm not very bullish on those.
Long history in the business, 30 years, you mentioned.
I know I look younger.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So much younger.
Yeah, it's true.
There must have been a moment along that journey where you'd made or been witness to a huge mistake that allowed you to make some better decisions now. What was there something? Can you talk about?
I'm
about
too
that?
generous with my time.
Okay.
And a couple of people I've pointed to a couple of times there. I now have basically guardians who respect my time more than I respect my own. I love humans, don't get me wrong, but I've a little too much. I'm historically the kind of guy who would like, don't worry, I got it type thing, right? And so the biggest mistakes I made in terms of, and I'm a dad, right? So you don't want to come home tired and, you know, brain drained. You want to, you know, keep moving and stay pumped. So the biggest mistakes I've made along those levels, and like everyone in this room has probably dealt with humans you've just been a little too generous with. So I guess it's kind of learning how to be judicious and fair with yourself, and also with how much time you give out. On the actual physical kind of product side mistakes, we've put some things out in market that have been a bit aggressive, as in ahead of their time. It's just certain scope and scale of things. You know, I get excited and I want to put them out there. Not haphazardly, maybe a little aggressive, but in general, I guess focus issues like anybody else.
We got a couple of minutes here. If there's any other questions, you can get them in. But how did you get involved in the business in the first place?
The distillery?
Just the booze business.
Oh, great story. So I went to school in Halifax, went to Dalhousie, and I was not a great student, let's be honest.
Anyone else from Dalhousie?
No?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm a mere part-timer myself. Thank you. No one laughs at that. But the, it's okay, left the self.
But you got to say it every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People hate it. I had this prof who basically, I got into, so my first couple of years I did okay, all right, and he said, don't come back, don't do your master's. You don't want to be a lawyer, you don't want to do this. He goes, you got a lot of energy, go do something you like. Make a list of things you like and try to work in that area. So I literally, good advice, right? So I said I like music, I like beer, I like travel, I like creativity. So I applied to ad agencies. No response. I applied, back in the day, by the way, you used to like type a letter on your typewriter, fold it in thirds, put it in this thing called an envelope, lick it, and like, so I used to like mail these things out and make phone calls on this device, rotary telephone, hello. No responses. I applied to agencies and beer companies. Isn't that so funny?
Yeah.
So like ended up through my
Two
career.
largest consumers of alcohol in the country.
Yeah, and but I never got hired, so I ended up kind of having to dig my way up in various kind of roles. But that rejection is kind of what made me a little hungrier, I think. Yeah.
What's your favorite NÜTRL flavor?
Cranberry for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey man, thank you for hanging out with us
Thank you.
and spending some time.
Right
I
on.
love this story.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.